Hello and welcome along to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ed McKnight.
And I'm Andrew Nicole.
And today on the show, about the future of property investment. Oh yes, we're going to go look at the stars. Let me polish up my tea leaves. Boil the jug and put my tea leaves there and polish up my crystal ball because we're looking into the future. This actually comes from one of the team who, I was talking to Toby Pascoe, one of our team the other day, and he said, look, a lot of people want to know, where do you think property investment in the property market is going to be in 15 to 20 years? So I thought, you know what, let's put our forecast that we usually put into our calculations into context, and let's talk about 9 different themes that will play in the property market over the next 15 to 20 years and give you a sense of where we think property investment is going to be going. Andrew, kick it off with the first of our 9 themes.
Well, I think firstly we talk about regulation because that's an ever-changing beast, and there'll be more regulation to come. So with such a stringent Reserve Bank, they're potentially going to have debt-to-income ratios, minimum interest rates for the tests, for servicing tests, maybe other things that we don't know about yet. But then you might also see some regulation go. So, you know, at some point we're going to have a centre-right government, and at this time they're going to, review some of the legislation that's come in over the last few years. Act National are talking about reversing the interest deductibility changes if they get back in, or if they get in. And at some point, we'll also have a new Reserve Bank governor who might be a bit more hands-off potentially and say, actually, housing affordability is not our problem. You deal with it to the government.
Yeah, I think there will be waves of different regulation. We'll probably get a bit more. At some point, some of that might start to get rolled back. Now, I'm not saying we're going to go back to the exact same legislative settings that we had 5, 6, 10 years ago, but we might have some of it come on, we'll have some of it go. That'll be an ever-changing beast and gives us lots of things to talk about on the podcast. Theme number 2 is housing cycles. So for the next 3 years, I'm still picking that we're going to see house prices grow at a good clip, slower pace compared to what we've seen. So we've seen 26%, 27% increases in house prices over a 12-month period. We're still going to see house price increases over the next 3 years, but certainly at a slower rate. But at some point over the next 15 to 20 years, we're going to see those slow. We're going to see them stagnate. And at some point, we're going to see them decline. And that's not something we should necessarily be scared of because that's just the way things go within economic cycles. At some point, there is going to be a turn in the economy. And because of that, we will have some recession over the next 15 to 20 years. We don't know what's going to necessarily cause it, but at some point, there will be an economic downturn. And unemployment will increase at some point in the future. And because of that, we may see house prices decline slightly. We may see a prolonged period of stagnation in house prices, as we saw after the 2008 recession, which in some cases, places like Gisborne had flat prices for around about 12 years. So at some point we will see that. And then after that, we'll see the economy bounce back. And at some point there will be another boom in house prices. But we will see some sort of cyclical nature happen. So right now we're in the middle of a boom. At some point, it's going to stagnate. At some point, during some economic crisis, we're going to see a slight decline. We'll see it recover again and we'll see it pick up. But I don't expect that we're going to be in the same position as we are now, where house prices are increasing at 9% over the last 6 months, for instance. We're not going to see that go on forever and ever and ever. At some point, we're going to see that happen, and just be prepared for it, especially people who have just got involved in the housing market, because there will be a stagnation. There will be a decline in house prices, and eventually there'll be a recovery and a boom as well.
Theme number 3. We're going to see developers go under. So developers are risk takers, and a lot of them are always rapidly expanding, taking on additional costs, new offices in different locations. At some point, there'll be a contraction, and some developers won't be financially structured to be able to weather that storm. And so building projects are going to go under, and houses will remain unfinished, be picked up by someone else and finished. And it'll be a great time for investors to be able to pick up a deal if they can take advantage of that. But this will cause a decline in the number of developments that are available at some point.
Theme number 4 for me is people will lose confidence in shares and will turn back to property at some point. So we're talking about, look, over the next 15 to 20 years, perhaps once, perhaps twice, we're going to see that economic contraction happen. because eventually we see an economic downturn every 10 years or so. So when that happens, we're going to see shares, which tend to be much more volatile, they're going to go down. Now, remember that there are a significant number of people who are investing in single companies at the moment through the likes of Sharesies, Hatch, and Stake. And so, look, people investing in this manner, people able to invest very small amounts of money through these platforms, I think this is a great thing. People are interested in growing their wealth. But there is a risk involved in investing in single companies. And the worry that I have is that there are a lot of young people who are investing who think that the market's going to go up forever. So you might have doubled your money over the last 12 months and you're thinking, holy hell, being a investing in shares is a
I'm
great
Warren
thing.
Buffett.
I'm the next, I'm the next Warren Buffett, and maybe some of them are, and good on them for making money. This is not to take away from that, but we've got to remember that while there are boom times, there will always be these contractions, and I think it's very important for all investors to be aware of that, because at some point, these, especially millennials, are going to see their money decline, their wealth decline, if they haven't diversified appropriately. And sometimes I actually see this in some of the Facebook groups that I'm involved with, like the Barefoot Investor New Zealand one, where I see sometimes people say, my KiwiSaver's declined over the last 3 weeks. I'm so worried. Should I be switching funds? Well, the answer is probably not. Not personalised financial advice. That's my disclaimer. But generally not, because you don't want to crystallize those losses. So I think what will happen is when we see the economy tank, some people who weren't expecting that decline or weren't prepared to face it, they'll start to get a bit hesitant about investing in shares, potentially turn back to property. I think that will happen in the future. Theme number 5, Andrew.
Theme number 5, at some point, that seems to be the reoccurring theme here, which is really funny because basically you can't hold us accountable because we'll just say, oh, no, it's not yet. At some point, something will happen that will kickstart another housing boom. And look, this could be 7 to 12 years in the future. Examples could include looser immigration laws, for example, and then all of a sudden a whole lot of people coming back into New Zealand, coming to New Zealand, and this would be from a centre-right government. We could see a decrease in interest rates caused by a recession, and that will cause an increased amount of borrowing potentially. We could see the removal of interest deductibility rules, and all of a sudden investors go out and snap up a bunch more investment property. So at some point, there will be something that kickstarts another housing boom.
And theme number 6 for me as well is that we are going to continue to see over the next 15 to 20 years, we're going to continue to see the hand wringing from journalists. And what I mean by that is that, ever since I've been reading a newspaper at the age of 6 months old, I've seen so many journalists be talking about, I was a prodigious child. I've been seeing journalists write about...
What happened?
I've been saying, let me have my monologue, Andrew. This is a good part of the podcast. Ever since then, you've seen journalists talk about the fact that buying your first home's so hard, And I'll never forget when I started reading Bob Jones' books where he talks about that back in the 60s this was happening. Back in the 60s where house prices were a 10th of the price, a 15th of the price that they are now. Buying your first home has always been hard. And no matter what the current price is, you will still continue to see people wring their hands in the papers and say it's too hard for first home buyers. We've got to do something about it because it's too hard. Now, look, I'm not saying we don't offer help, but of course we do. And for all of you first home buyers out there who are listening to this, and I know there are a lot of you, hey, look, I'm not saying I want to make it harder for you, but what I'm simply saying is that it has always been hard, and we're going to continue to see the sort of media attention given to property and house prices that we've always seen. Whether the price is half of what it is today or whether it's double what it is today, we're still going to see that. And so just be prepared for it. We will see it no matter what the price of property is. We're going to see that amount of attention given to it.
Theme number 7, you're going to see tenants and those on middle incomes will be squeezed. Tenants, because the increased regulation around investment properties mean that people will offload their old properties that don't meet healthy homes, or they'll get rid of those properties that don't get any interest deductibility in 4 years. And so that leaves less properties in the market. Therefore, that puts an upward pressure on rents. And so, of course, tenants will end up paying for that cost. The middle income earners, well, if they're building a property investment portfolio, it's going to continue to get harder with things like LVR restrictions, DTIs, all of those kind of things, which mean you can't borrow as much. And, with an existing property that doesn't have any interest deductibility on the loan, well, again, that's going to be left on the shelf.
And theme number 8 is one of my favourites. It's what I like to call the Lockin effect. And what I mean by that is, do you know what tends to happen with house prices? Have you noticed this, Andrew? That as house prices increase, we all think, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. How can it go any higher? And then once it reaches a level, that just becomes the market level. And so whenever you look at a graph of house prices, what tends to happen? They shoot up, oh my gosh, and then they just start to flatline. And that's the new market level, because that's what people expect their houses worth. Now, look, of course, during economic crises of 2008, of course, we saw decreases in prices for a time. But generally, they recovered. And when they declined from their peak, but they never go back to they haven't historically gone back to the level they previously were. So we see an increase, maybe a slight decrease, but once we see house prices increase, that's more or less their new price. Why? Because we've got this lock-in effect. And you know what else I mean by that? Is you start to see policies that lock in the current level of house prices at what they currently are. Things like increasing first home grant house price caps. So every time house prices increase, we start to see those house price caps start to creep up. And that means first home buyers are able to accept and access government money to purchase properties at higher and higher levels. It's things like Reserve Bank policy, which means that, hey, look, we're not trying to create a decrease in house prices because that would hurt the economy, but let's just keep them at the current level, and hopefully we'll keep them at the current price level, and we'll see incomes increase. When you see a lot of that sort of level of policy, I always see a sort of lock-in effect. Debt to income ratios, I see that as part of this as well, where we're trying to increase more regulation, not to cause the price of houses to go down, but just simply to keep them at their current level. And I always think, well, that's great for anybody who currently owns properties, because you know that once you see a significant increase in prices, you are unlikely to see a sharp decrease in the price of properties. You might see some, but you won't see as big an increase as you've had. So for instance, are we likely to see a 35% decrease in house prices? Because we've just seen a 35% increase in house prices since March 2020. Look, nobody's talking about seeing another 35% decrease at all. So we've had this massive spurt of growth. Maybe we'll see a small decrease, but we're not expecting all of that wealth that we've created over the last 15 to 18 months to disappear. No. In some cases, in many instances, or in some ways, it's effectively locked in, because that's the new market level. And I think we'll continue to see this. We'll see a spurt in house price growth in 12 years' time, and then we'll see some sort of lock-in effect where the majority of those gains are locked in. Now, that's sort of guarantee, of course. Nothing in investment is a guarantee, but that's what we've tended to see over time. What's theme number 9, Andrew?
Theme number 9 is that people that can hold will do so and do well. Because if you can afford to hold through turbulent times, then you make money over the long term, and our house prices will continue to increase through rising building costs, population growth, household income, and just general inflation. So those that can weather the storm will come out well.
And that's the important thing. So make sure that you're in the cash flow position where you are able to hold these properties, you understand what they're going to either earn or cost you per week, and that you are budgeting for all different types of costs, all 9 that we usually talk about on the show, so that you are able to weather those storms. And hey, speaking of the future of property investment, one big part of the future property investment, as we said in theme number 1, is that regulation. And the big one on everybody's lips at the moment, debt to income ratios. Now, our next webinar coming up on Tuesday, the 16th November, 7 p.m, we are just going to be dedicating that webinar to debt to income ratios. What do they mean for you? How do you work around them so you can continue investing in property? Our friend of the show, Peter Norris, he's going to be there with us to answer all of your questions. So if you want to come along to that, tap or swipe over the cover art. I'm going to drop a link in the show notes where you can sign up for that, or just go to opuspartners.co.nz. You'll be able to sign up there. Thanks for listening to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ian McKnight.
And I'm Andrew Nichols.
And we're going to be back again tomorrow with even more daily strategies, tactics, and insights to help you get the most out of the New Zealand property market. Until next time.